Hey listeners, it's Justine here. We got a great episode for you today. We have my husband Kevin here on the pod to talk about fatherhood, meal prep strategies, and date night activities. Kevin is the love of my life, the father of my child, and also my best friend. He's very sweet, funny, and incredibly smart. I hope you enjoy listening to him chat with me. This was a really fun interview. Laura is still feeling a bit unwell, listeners, but don't worry, she will be back soon. I hope you enjoy the show. So, welcome to Loud and Proud Mamas. This is Kevin that we have on the podcast today. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi.
So, Kevin, I hear that you have a child.
Yes, I have a 15 months old, about to be 16-month old, and he's exactly at the age where it's important to count in months because every month he learns so much.
He does.
It makes a difference.
So, this little 15-month-old, who do you happen to share this 15-month-old with?
I happen to share it with you.
Yes, our son.
Yes, our son.
Our very stinky son.
Yes.
And how have the last 15 months been?
Busy.
Non-stop.
Yeah, non-stop.
Have you enjoyed it so far?
Yeah.
So a segment that we have here on Loud and Proud Mamas is called My Horrifying Poop Moment of the Day, where typically Laura and I share a story with each other about a horrible poop moment that either of our children have given to us. So I've told the story of the time our son pooped in the bathtub, but I was wondering if you wanted to share a horrifying poop moment of your own that you were dealing with our son.
I do have a couple of those actually. One that I remember particularly well is I remember I had just changed him. I put him in a fresh diaper, and I forgot to fluff the diaper. So fluffing the diaper means you put a diaper on, and then you kind of run your finger along the in-leg seam to kind of bring the material out to kind of keep stuff better later on. And I changed his diaper, put him down. It's been 30 seconds, realized, oh, I didn't do that. So I kind of just reach in to do the seam, and that boy had already pooped. And I touched it, unfortunately, and I was just like, oh no. Because we have something called a 5-minute diaper, so we put a fresh diaper on and he soils it within 5 minutes. This was not only a 30-second diaper, soiled within 30 seconds, but I found out the hard way.
He does have the worst poops. He's a wonderful eater, we're so blessed with that. He has such a big appetite and he's so adventurous with the foods that he tries. However, what goes in must come out.
Unfortunately.
Even our daycare person has commented on the size of his poops.
Yeah, we were like, wow, he has a adult-sized poop sometimes, doesn't he?
Yes. That is our intro segment, my dear listeners. I hope you have enjoyed this wonderful poop moment from back and forth between two somewhat seasoned parents. So a segment that we have here on Loud and Proud Mamas is pro tips from amateur moms. I was hoping you could give us a tip about meal prepping because I can testify you are very good at meal prepping.
Yes, so reason why we love meal prepping is because let's say you have a young child and you have to get dinner on the table. Sometimes you have time to make an elaborate dinner, and sometimes you want to pull something out of the freezer and heat it up. But we don't like frozen food from the store because it also often has a lot of sodium and a lot of preservatives. So sometimes what we do is we take the time on the weekend to do a big batch of certain items that will freeze and then use later on. And the things I'm really good at doing, really according to Justine, is I make black bean burritos that only Justine eats. I make them, but I don't eat them. I make ravioli, which we can easily boil and dump pasta sauce on later. I make dumplings wonton type that we can use either as eating dumplings or we can put it in soup. Those are the things that we have discovered that I have a good ability at.
Yeah, it's repetitive. So, each burrito has to be more or less similar to the last one. There's a consistency in the ingredients. Like every ravioli, every wonton has the same sort of filling, and the wrapping is similar. So I think that really speaks to something that you're good at, where you're like, yes, I can watch my skills improve from one burrito to the next, because you've been on quite the black bean burrito journey in our marriage.
Yes, every batch that I've made, I've tried something slightly different. At the start, we blended the beans.
Mm-hmm.
Then we discovered that it's more fun to have beans in some sort of gravy, so we don't blend them anymore. But something that's important is to get the consistency correct. So let's say you're having beans in some sort of little gravy. You have to consider that you're gonna have to roll it up in a burrito later. So you really have to cook it down and have it really really thick. And then when you roll it, you want it to be cooled. So if it's fully cool, it means it's even thicker for rolling. And then when you cook it, it kind of melts back down again.
And just to be clear, listeners, what Kevin means by cooking it down is because we do it from dried. We don't use canned beans, is what I'm saying. We go the the extra mile by using black beans and just boiling them in a pot with some spices, some onions, some garlic, and that's what you mean by cooking it down.
Yes.
And so tell me about ravioli, because originally this was going to be my idea to get really good at pasta. And then you discovered, this is something that I'm actually very good at. So tell me a little bit. Let's start first with the pasta itself, the noodle. Why don't we go all the way down to the thinnest layer?
Yeah, so we have a pasta maker machine that you have different layers, different level of thickness. And we discovered that when we go down to the thinnest, it's almost like too thin, and then they break when you boil them. So once again, by doing multiple batches, we learn what works. So now instead of going to the thinnest, we go to the second thinnest, and I've been having a lot more success.
Yes. And so we've not only made ravioli, we've also made wontons, which is so good. I had them for lunch this week and they were 10 out of 10. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
So, when we're thinking about meal prep, one thing that I struggle with is that I have too much fun. I want to pick a really big project. I want to get carried away. I want to spend $100. And then you're usually the ones like, all right, we got to think about this realistically. How do you approach meal prepping when it's time to fill the freezer?
I try to do a ratio of effort, labor, and cost.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's going to be cheap to do, and something that, we're not scared to put in labor to do things homemade. But I think we still have to be strategic about it. Like, what can we do in still fairly quickly and efficiently? So yeah, cost, labor, time are the things I think about.
I'm going to throw out some foods that we've made over the past few years, and you tell me if this is a good meal prep, a bad meal prep, and why.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to start with lasagna made for freezing.
That's a medium meal prep.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you make a lasagna in a tray, and you freeze it. Let's say when you make it, you make like 6 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you freeze them, and then you can use them one at a time. It's fairly quick to do, but the reason why I would say it's more, instead of let's say we have categories of very good, good, and then not as good. I would say it's in the middle because it takes a lot of time to cook because it's a brick, right? You have a brick of pasta, sauce, cheese. So like baking it takes about an hour to an hour and a half to bake it from frozen. So you have to plan ahead that's what you're gonna have for dinner. So it means that the day that you're using it, you're doing barely any work. You're just throwing it in there, but you have to be available to throw it early enough, in advance enough. So if you want dinner at 5, you have to think of putting it at 3:30. It's not a good like, oh my god, I need dinner on the table in 15 minutes type of meal prep.
Louisiana red beans, and which you would make the rice separate when it's time to eat.
I would say that's a really good one. It goes in the category of really good because it's both very cheap to make. It's made with beans, which are very cheap. It's made with hock, which is a very cheap part of the pork. It's quick to make and it's quick to heat up. And you usually eat it with rice, which we also make in an automatic rice cooker. So the boy loves it, and so does Justine. So this one is one of the top ones.
Chicken pot pie.
Chicken pot pie, I think, unfortunately, is one of the less good ones. Following reasons: it uses chicken, which can be cheap, but depending if you get a sale or not, sometimes it's not the cheapest compared to beans, let's say. It has the same problem as lasagna, that it makes quite a brick, so you have to plan ahead because it's going to take quite a long time to cook. And because it's something that has a dough on top, depending on the consistency of your filling, the dough can become a bit soggy when you cook it. So there's also that risk there. So I think chicken pot pie, like we've made it multiple times, we've enjoyed it, but I think it's one of the less efficient ones.
Quarter pounder burgers.
I think those are some of the best ones. So what we do is we use ground beef. We make a patty recipe. We make burger patties that we freeze, and then the day that we need them, we pull one. We pull one per person out. We pull 3 out. We cook them in the pan. Takes about 10 minutes. We make them homemade, so once again, we control the sodium and the preservatives. And because we control also the sodium, preservative, the fat level, and then we top it with vegetables, we often end up making a pretty healthy burger. So I think this one is one of the best ones.
All right, last one. Are you ready?
Yes.
Green onion pancakes.
I would say medium. Medium level of quality because they're pretty good. I think in terms of price, they're pretty cheap. It's kind of a dough with green onions. So it's cheap to make. I think in terms of labor, I think it takes a fair amount of labor. You have to roll it out. You have to kind of like stack it with parchment paper in between, so you kind of use fair amount of material as well. When you cook it, Justine likes them no matter what. I need them to be particularly crispy or particularly well cooked through. So sometimes it's hit or miss on the cooking for me personally. So that's why I would say it's a medium one.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. And this has been Pro Tips from Amateur Dads with a meal prep review from Kevin. So I want to talk a little bit about fatherhood. What do you remember from the very, very early days of Sam being born?
I remember the very first hour of Sam being born. So Justine has told her birth story on this podcast before, so you know that she ended up having a C-section. And something about a C-section is that, let's say they perform the surgery, they take the baby out, and then the baby is now in the world, the baby is born, but they still need to patch the mother up. They still need to finish the surgery, which can take some time. So what they did is they sent me back to the room with the baby. So for the first hour of Sam's life, I was alone with him in the room doing skin to skin. And I had him against me, and I had never in my life held a baby that small. Not only that small, I don't remember the last time I held even like a 3-year-old before Sam. I'm not somebody who's been around children a lot as in my adult life. So I was sitting in a chair with a baby who was 15 minutes old, and I was alone, and he kept looking for a nipple because he was thirsty. And I remember thinking, hold on, buddy, Mama's coming soon. And you know how when you're at the hospital, you can press a button to call a nurse?
Mm-hmm.
At some point, I dropped his hat, and they said, a hat on a newborn is very important. And I was so scared he would be cold. I called the nurse, pressed a button because I didn't want to lean forward, pick up the hat, risk dropping him. I was so scared, and it was like glass porcelain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I called up the nurse for being like, can you pick up the hat right there, and like, can you like, and then at some point it had been almost an hour, and again I called the nurse, being like, is my wife okay? 'Cause it's been an hour, and I'm getting worried here. But then soon after, Justine came in and Sam was fed and everything.
Yes. Do you think he's like glass or porcelain now?
Oh, now I throw him around, and I play pretty rough with him now.
You guys are so rough. So I like to play the game called Pick Up the Baby and give him kisses and brush his hair, maybe sing a song, rock him a little bit. And Papa likes to play a game called Let's Reenact the 90s era of WWE wrestling.
That is an exaggeration.
But which one does our son prefer?
He's at an age where he likes playing with me a lot, I think.
Mhm.
So what I actually do, I throw him in the air very carefully. I kind of put him upside down very carefully, kind of gentle gymnastics. And he's at an age where he loves it. He
Yes.
really loves it.
Yes.
We say rough housing, but it's all very safe.
Yes, yes. I was exaggerating with WWE wrestling, but to paint a picture for our listeners,
Yeah.
we do kind of fall into that classic one parent is very gentle and the other parent is more wild.
Yeah.
Do you have a memory about our son that always makes you laugh or smile?
So one of the memories that makes me laugh a lot is one of my first memories with him, so early on that it was before he was even born. So Justine was pregnant, and it was at the time where he was kicking a lot, and I really wanted to feel it. And every time I would put my hand on there, either he would stop kicking or he wouldn't kick hard enough for me to feel it. And then one time we had just been to the doctor for the pregnancy, and we were coming back, and we were in the car. We were driving, and I was about to get on the highway. And Justine said, "Oh, Kevin, he's kicking now." So I reached across the seat and I put my hand on there, and I felt him kick for the first time. I did. Really hard, actually. So I'm freaking out. I'm trying to drive, trying to merge on the highway, and I'm like being very emotional, and I'm tearing up, and I'm being like, oh my god, I just felt my son kick. And I'm like, I think that boy's always going to have a good timing, I think. He's going to have a sense of timing in his life.
He is extremely funny.
Yes.
Is there something in your last 15 months that has surprised you about fatherhood?
Yes. Something that surprises me is, parents always say that they love their children, they cherish their children. It's the most beautiful thing. Sometimes you don't know until you feel it, and something that surprises me sometimes is when I play with him and he starts to laugh and laugh and laugh. Just the amount of feelings that I get in my heart just hearing him laugh and seeing him be happy. I didn't expect how strong it would be. Sometimes he's laughing and I'm like, wow, that it really is the best sound in the world.
Yeah.
And I knew in my head that a parent's love for their child was strong, but now I feel like I was surprised by how much I would feel it in my heart.
There's nothing like it. Parenthood, the love you have for this tiny little human that just depends on you 100% and is also 100% the boss of you at all times. In fact, it's incredible we have this time right now together to record a podcast.
Yes, he's sleeping at the moment, and he's being good. He hasn't woken up. He hasn't moaned into the monitor or anything. So cross our fingers that we can finish.
Cross our fingers. So I want to talk a little bit about you outside of fatherhood and outside of meal prep. So we don't have to talk about the specific names of the towns that you grew up in or in the town that we are here in, but you've always more or less been kind of like a small town kind of guy.
Yes.
So how would you kind of describe the place where you grew up?
Yeah, so I grew up in a town that was about I think when I was young it was about 30,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Not like a big city, but a town, working class. We lived in a small neighborhood where a lot of people knew the other kids, stuff like that. And then I moved to an even smaller village of like 2,000 people, where everybody really does know each other.
Yes, I've definitely learned that at least I feel very, very known whenever I'm walking around.
Yeah, and the biggest city I've lived in was 30,000, and then I downsized to 2,000. And I'm a type of people where living in a big city with a million people not sound appealing at all.
Yeah, I'm glad that we've been able to settle down in a place that you like.
Yes.
And so between you and me, I feel like we don't necessarily hide the fact that we're queer. I feel like our friends know, people who have asked us questions directly know what type of queers we are. But, just to paint a picture, listeners, Kevin's a very masculine man, and I am a little bit more on the masculine side of a woman. I wear more masculine clothing. I have short hair. I have an affectation that is not necessarily feminine, I would say. So, do you feel that when we're out in the village together, do you feel that people read us as a queer couple? Or do they just say, no, that is 100% a straight couple?
I'm not sure what they think, because, if we go into looks and stereotype, Justine looks like a lesbian.
Yes.
And so I think people see Justine and assume that she might be a queer woman, and then they find out that she has a husband, which is me. And I think some people wonder what our relationship.
Yeah. I think it goes the same way with you, where you're this masculine man and, you're talking with the boys or you're talking with, other women in your life and you mention your wife, like, oh, my wife cooked this or my wife sewed this or my wife is planting a garden, and they have an idea of what that means in terms of what I look like and what I sound like. And then I'll visit you at the office and I'm like, bonjour, alors, c'est moi, c'est Justine. And people are like, what is happening?
Yeah, it might not be what they were expecting my wife to look like.
Do you remember that time? So, do you remember shortly after giving birth, we had a home visit from a nurse, and she was so sweet. She was checking in on the baby, she was weighing him, she was checking in on me, seeing how I was doing. And one of the things that she had on her checklist was to ask about birth control, because it would be dangerous for me to get pregnant so shortly after giving birth.
Yeah, I remember.
And so usually with medical professionals, we kind of have a shorthand when they ask us questions like, oh, what kind of birth control you have, or why did you do IUI, stuff like that. We just say, oh, we're an LGBTQ couple. And, they usually drop it and move on.
Usually that answers the question, yeah.
Yeah, without, explaining too much. But in this situation, she did not drop it. And so she's asking me, okay, what kind of birth control do you have? And do you need me to prescribe you any? And I'm like, no, thank you. We're an LGBTQ couple. And she's like, qu'est-ce que ça? I don't understand. What is LGBTQ couple? And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, we're a queer couple. So, we don't need birth control. And she says, okay, I think I understand. You are a lesbian. And then she points at you, Kevin, and she says, you are a gay man, and together you are best friends, and you have decided to make a family. So you bought a house together, and this baby is a result of your relationship. And we were like, not quite.
Not quite.
So at this point, you had to jump in French.
Yes, I had to go in French, so we weren't speaking our second language, and I had to explain, look, I'm trans, I don't produce sperm. We had a sperm donor, we did an IUI, but we're married, we're in love, we're not a co-partnership or co-parents, we're a normal couple. It's just that I don't have any sperm because I'm a trans guy.
Yes, and then she looked at you like her mind was blown.
She says what a lot of people tell me because I'm a person who passes very well. She says, I would have never guessed.
Yeah, which is a very specific compliment that trans people get very often, being like, a trans person in front of me?
In the wild, not at gay pride.
Yeah, you meet a trans person outside the boundaries of Montreal Gay Pride.
Yeah.
So that's always an interesting moment when you're existing as a queer in the wild and you're interacting with medical professionals and they're not necessarily expecting anything queer about you, and then all of a sudden you're like, surprise, here I am. Because people normally suspect they suspect something queer about you, but you usually get like some flavor of bisexual.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like when we're talking to straight cis people, they're like, something is queer, so we'll go with bisexual.
Yes.
They don't suspect trans man.
I don't think they do. A lot of time, if I don't come out, I think I'm fortunate enough that I pass enough that it's not what people guess. I'm kind of invisible a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And then I come out, bonjour, ça va?
And yeah, and they see my wife and they're like, there has to be something queer about him.
Yeah.
Something has to be.
I smell some flavor of queer. I'm not sure what flavor though.
Yeah.
And so, other than like, interactions with medical professionals, has being trans come up at all in your experience of fatherhood?
Not really.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Sam is my son. I've been raising him from day one. I'm a very involved father. The fact that we went through a donor does not change my relationship with him at all. We always laugh that I'm on the birth certificate, and that if we ever get separated, whatever, even if I'm not biologically the dad, I'm still gonna be run after
Child support.
for child support.
Yeah. So I can go after you for child support, but you can come after me for custody. So that's the deal.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting that, even though the podcast is called Loud and Proud Mamas, our experience of being parents doesn't always intersect with being queer all that much. It comes up in very quiet ways, in terms of fashion, in terms of presentation, but our son does not care that we are queer. Our son cares that he has a clean diaper, that he gets milk on demand, that he has interesting textures during dinner, what kind of surgeries you've had in the past, and how I like to have my hair cut. This is bottom of the priority list for him.
Yeah.
I think that's nice. I think that even though queerness shapes our life in so many ways, it's nice that it's not the main part of parenthood. And so, another part about parenthood is making sure that we make time to go on dates.
Yes, that's very important to take time and
Go on dates.
yes.
And so, I would like to ask, do you want to go on a date with me soon?
Yes, I would love to.
Maybe we could do a theater date soon.
Yes, there's a local theater Justine and I like to go to. We've been to it a few times. We've seen very interesting plays. We've seen interesting circus acts.
Oh, we love a good circus, don't we? Some acrobats, somebody doing a backflip.
Yes, one time we were in the front row and some people were doing the trapeze thing. And I remember thinking, if that girl falls, she's gonna break her neck like 3 feet away from me.
I was worried they were going to fall on us.
Yeah.
Sometimes we like to get really good seats for theater. We like to get right up front. Do you remember that one time where the fog machine was a little bit too enthusiastic and we got waterboarded by a fog machine?
Yeah, so they try to fog it up, of course, but you're in the front row, and then with the angle of the thing, we were just like, oh no, we were right in the aim.
Yes, yes. For our last segment, I'm going to share one date story of a date that I really liked, and you can tell me of a type of date that you really like.
Okay.
So, one of my favorite date night stories is that Kevin likes to do this thing where for an event like my birthday or for Mother's Day or for Christmas, Kevin will go to the theater website and he'll just choose something for me. He'll do research, but he won't tell me what it is. And, I'll get tickets and I'll know the name of the event, but I don't get to know anything beyond that. And so we get dressed and we go, and we were for this one really, really cool event that it was this wrestling themed event that was half Quebecer, but like a Quebecer retelling of Greek mythology. And they were all wrestlers. They were all pro wrestlers. Also, it was a musical.
Yes. There was a lot going on. So, like Justine said, she gets the tickets with the name and she doesn't know what to expect. So, imagine a play full of Greek mythology references, talking about these characters, these Greek brothers, all this stuff. But they're also wrestlers and they're also singing as well. It was really good, actually.
It was so good. And do you remember the villains with the horse? They had that headless horse they kept carrying, and they were from Trois Rivières.
Yeah.
And like, you gotta understand, listeners, like it was so Quebecer because like every character had a stereotype of where they came from.
Yes.
So if you remember, like the Trois Rivières guys were like super slick and like super tough, kind of fratty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have good memories of the Trois Rivières guys because that's where I did the Explore program, and I was like, I 100% understand this reference.
Yes.
So that is one of my favorite dates that we've ever gone on. But yeah, that type of date is what I love, is just being given tickets to some kind of live event and you being like, all right, get dressed. This is the time we're leaving. Let's go.
Yes.
What is a type of date that you like?
I also like to take you on mystery events. One of the most recent ones we've done, I took Justine to a speed skating competition.
Yes.
So in February, I was watching the Olympics, and I got a lot into the speed skating, the short track. You can have long track. You can have short track. I find the short track more thrilling. So I had been watching it. I found it a lot of fun. So I asked Justine, for our second wedding anniversary, I can get us tickets to that. Are you interested? So usually I surprise her with shows. But because this is a sports event, I didn't just surprise her. I wanted to make sure fairly interested. So she said, look, I have no idea what to expect, but sure, I'm in.
Yeah.
So the day comes. We go over there, and I know a little more what to expect. Justine doesn't know what to expect at all. So it's speed skating, and it starts, and usually we watch a show, right? So we sit, we pay attention, maybe we clap once in a while. This time we're watching a race with like Canadian players that we're rooting for. I never heard Justine scream. Go! Go! And she had, they gave us kind of a fan that you could clap to make sound. And she would clap that fan so hard. And I was like, wow. I've never seen you in like sports modes where you're just like rooting and screaming for somebody.
It's something else, yeah, being in live sports.
Yeah, it was very intense. I don't know how often we're gonna do live sports because sometimes it's expensive, sometimes it's always in the city. We got to do a long drive, and we already talked how I'm a small town person, and sometimes going to the city is demanding. So I don't know how much sports we're gonna do from now on, but that experience, that one date, was pretty special. And then there was a controversy. I think Justine talked about it on the podcast before. It was a high ride of emotion.
Yes. Can you tell it from your perspective? Because I told it from my perspective.
Yeah. So we there's the Canadian team, and on the Canadian team there's this guy who's been doing well on the world scene, and he was really hoping to do well at the Olympics. So he went to the Olympics with a lot of high hopes, and things didn't really go the way he wanted. So he didn't win an individual medal. And then they went to the final of the world competition, and he's like, "Look, here I'm gonna get my individual medal. I'm ready. I'm gonna do it. I swear I'm gonna do it." And the race goes on, and he gets the gold. He gets the gold.
He does.
He's celebrating. Understand is that this is an athlete from Montreal, and the competition is happening in Montreal. So this is like the home crowd. The fact that this guy won the gold at this moment. Not only he's doing laps, like I'm standing, I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. Everybody's cheering, and then the ref is like, "Disqualification for William Dungenue," and everybody's like, "What?" And that's something I learned. So in some sports, let's say you watch football or something like that, sometimes as fans are pretty passionate and pretty aggressive, and they scream and they boo and stuff like that. But there's sports like tennis, sports like speed skating, where they expect the fans to be a little more polite. It's just a different vibe, and so they do that, and people are like, "Boo!" And there's a commenter in the microphone. They're like, do not boo. This is not the vibe here." So everybody stopped. Everybody stayed polite, but like after that, like the vibe was a little different in the room.
There was a little bit of the balloon losing its air a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say it was very high in emotions.
Well, that's the end of our interview. Do you have anything else that you want to share before we close out?
I don't think so.
Wonderful. Will you come back to Loud and Proud Mamas?
Of course.
Wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
Well, listeners, I hope that you enjoyed this interview and getting to know my husband, Kevin, and we hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great rest of your night.